1.2 million fake applicants applied last year to community colleges in California. And right now, there are a number of fake students out there in our community college system, to the point where kids cannot take their classes because these fake students are taking their spots. Our guests today are Marvin Martinez and Jeannie Kim, who are community college leaders. They're here to tell us what they found in their campus and how these fake students are impacting students in California and community colleges.
What's made this situation of fraudulent enrollments so different than anything that I've seen before in my 36 years in higher ed is that it's happened on a massive scale. It's happened in almost 80% now of the campuses. That means 90 colleges at least have these issues and these situations.
I'm Santiago Canyon. Welcome to California Insider. Marvin, it's great to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And Jeannie, it's great to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you.
We want to talk to you about the phenomena that's happening in California right now. About 1.2 million fake students applied last year to community colleges. This is almost 30% of new students that are applying. Mm-hmm. What's happening?
Having fraudulent enrollments is, again, it's nothing new. It's been going on for a long time. What made it catapulted and what was the springboard to a lot more was really when COVID happened. So when COVID happened, community colleges, not just our district, but many other districts throughout the whole state, I would say about 80% of our courses were face-to-face, just like we are right now. And maybe 10, 20% were online. And in some campuses it was 10% or less. That was before COVID. After COVID, we began to experiment with Zoom. So the number in many ways shifted, where 80% of our courses were now online as opposed to being face-to-face, and 20% or less were face-to-face. So the world, in many ways, in education changed completely over a span of 3 to 4 years. So what that change created is that if you have students who are online, they could take the class from anywhere from where they live. We have students who are taking our classes throughout the whole state, Eureka, Fresno, Sacramento, as well as this local area. We have students taking our classes from other states. And because of the quick change, no one was really prepared for these fraudulent actors to just triple in size. Because if you look at the numbers prior to COVID, it was basically zero. We didn't really have...
Because you would see the students face-to-face,
yep.
Right, before you...
Exactly. It was the old school, right? Old way where you come to the class and you ask, are you present? And you say, you raise your hand, and yes, I'm here. That was the way that it basically was done. But that changed. So we no longer do that in that manner really at all.
At Santiago Canyon, we saw the shift in the fall 2024 enrollments. So we knew that there were fraudulent actors that were in the system. And as the chancellor mentioned, it has been around for a long period of time. So by fall of 2024, we'd already endured it for over 4 years, right? And in fall, what we started to notice is that we had great enrollment growth. More students had come in, so our increase in headcount was up. Our FTS, our accounting for how we account for the students in the classrooms, all of our enrollments were up. And we were excited. We were celebrating, right? Everybody was absolutely thrilled. We were up 10, 12, 13%. And as those numbers went up, we became even more elated. Then the first week of classes come in, and the faculty members get into those classes, and they see that these are not real students. They have questions. They're wondering, why are they not behaving the way that a student is supposed to behave in terms of these online classes, right? And so they discovered that a lot of these students were just fake. They had said that they were students, they'd enrolled in the class, et cetera, down the line. Some didn't actually show up. Others of them did show up, but they didn't necessarily complete work in the first week of class. And so we started to, the faculty members started to filter out these students. So where we were at a high of 10 to 12%, 13%, We went in the opposite direction because our faculty had this reaction to all of these fraudulent actors that were there and saying, these aren't real students, I need to kick them out, because that was their responsibility at that point because the classes had started. So they started dropping all of these students, right? We thought were students, but they were fraudulent actors. There were some real students that were caught in that mix, which was part of the reason why we had to put in other measures. You know, it was hard for the faculty members to really determine who was real and who wasn't real, right? They're just going based on their gut instincts and whether or not they were turning in enrollments, et cetera, or homework, et cetera. So 2 weeks go by and our census is completed. And by that point, we're in the opposite direction by negative 10%. So we lost enrollment.
20%.
We basically lost 20 to 23% of the enrollment within a 2-week time frame. So everything that was up went down in the opposite direction. And that equated to somewhere between 10 to 12,000 enrollments. And there was a smaller head count that's associated with that, because what we found are the bad actors were in multiple classes. So each enrollment could have been, 5 enrollments per one bad actor. So they were just filling up space. And the problem with this was that they were taking up space that students needed, real students needed, in order to graduate, to be able to complete their degree, to complete their certificate. And that's what really called us to action, right? And so our team went into action and said, they started investigating, and sure enough, we figured out who was fraudulent, who was real. But at that point, we were very limited in our resources. So then we went out to look for an AI resource that happened to fall into our lap. Literally, I was at a conference, heard the speaker because they were deploying it at 2 of the colleges up north, and they were about to start a 3rd and a 4th college, and we signed on. I literally walked up to the CEO and said, I need your product. This is how much money I have. Shake on it, and I need you here next week. And that's how it happened.
The old-fashioned way. At the end of the day, it's about shaking someone's hand and getting that going.
How did your teachers find out that these students are fake?
They weren't behaving like actual students. They weren't behaving like real students. So there was similar kinds of assignments being turned in. There was no response, or it seemed like a fake response. So our faculty are experienced faculty. They've been teaching for long periods of time, whether they're adjunct or full-time. And they know that when the student behavior patterns, right? Because this is their craft. And they were noticing that there was an aberration in that behavior pattern of engagement or interaction, or complete non-engagement whatsoever. So the student was there, but they weren't responding to anything. They weren't turning in the homework, et cetera. And if they didn't turn in the homework within those first 2 weeks, then they were dropped. Because why would they be there and not complete homework, and why are they taking up space that they shouldn't be in the first place? So our faculty really went into action and cleaned their rosters to a point where it impacted our enrollment with a 23% decrease, right? And so, the faculty then came back to us and said, we need help. And where we heard the additional cry was from our counseling faculty, because in those first 2 weeks, what's happening is that students are looking for classes to enter into. And our counseling faculty couldn't find classes for our students to actually enroll in, because they were all being taken up by these bots. And our students who were going through it by themselves also couldn't find classes. And so they were coming in trying to schedule more counseling sessions to figure out if they can get a class. And the counselor was like, I don't have anything for you because this class is completely full. They make a phone call over to our director of A&R, or dean of A&R, and is this really true? Is this class really full? They start an investigation process, and they find out, you know what? No, these are bots. You can actually enroll that student, but they can't enroll because the technology component doesn't let you over-enroll that class, right? And they had started in the bot arena, they started figuring out how to get on our wait lists. So they weren't just in the classroom, they filled up our wait lists. And in one situation with our anthropology faculty, the dean and that faculty member actually sat down together, and they lifted the cap, the course cap, by 30 every day to see what would happen. because there's no way historically that they're going to fill immediately, because it's never happened before, not in the 25 years of our institutional history. So they started increasing it, and every day, the second they opened it, the next hour, it was 100% filled to capacity. They went all the way up to a 90 or 120. And they were like, these are not real students. And so they closed it all down, figured out which ones were real students, and it turned out that there were only 12 to 15 real students in that class, even though it was filling at that rate. So yeah, it's been hard.
I was going to say that, even though I do remember, of course, when Dr. Kim had to cut all that enrollment, and that's devastating because the way that we are compensated in order to pay for all the bills is through enrollments. So when you cut 23% from your enrollment base, that's a lot of money that you're losing. So on the one hand, it was devastating. On the other hand, it was okay in a sense that you can't get paid for fake enrollments. So it's better to make that cut up front than at the end.
Then find out a year later.
Exactly. But I do remember, of course, when all that discussion was, even though I think we talked about that, it still makes you feel bad. But I think, in many ways, the actions that were taken by Dr. Kim and the campus to just deal with it now, let's take out that enrollment, I think was a good move, because otherwise, either you're going to pay up front or pay in the end. So, they chose to pay up front, get it done, and not, get themselves compensated for fake enrollments.
Because the state will compensate the school based on the enrollment.
Exactly.
Now, what do they want, these fake students, fake bots? What do they get? Is it the financial aid dollars?
Good question. We still haven't defined specifically what they want. We anticipate that what they want is a number of things. One is, sure, they want to tap into financial aid, into the Pell Grants. That's no doubt, I think, a motivation. Another motivation is to basically tap into the information of that student. Maybe get access to the Social Security number. Maybe get access to the information that they could use for any other type of criminal activity. So we don't know specifically what they want, but we do know that they obviously want information, and possibly they can tap into the Pell Grants. They could, they want those dollars that are there. The problem, though, is because we don't know exactly who is doing this, we're not seeing real action yet from the federal government, from the Department of Justice or the state attorney general's office, them pursuing anything legal, because I don't think they found who they want to go after. Our understanding is they don't even live in this country. They could be working from other countries around the world. So how do you pursue them? How do you go after them?
I actually attended community college for a couple of years. And when I attended, for the tuition, you had to pay a small amount when you're from the state. Do these fake students pay for the classes?
So when the COVID situation happened, we had opportunity to be able to suspend that tuition aspect of it. And so we've been able to roll that in slowly. And then as that also started to take shape, we also started to bring in programs like College Promise, which actually then covered the tuition for the students, et cetera. So between a number of those different factors, all of the systems for that tuition payment haven't all been put into play. At least for us, we have not fully put that into play. And as a result, we need to close that door. And so the plan right now is to close that door completely starting in the spring of 2026. And so because our students over this time period have been accustomed to not having to be chased down for the payment. So majority of our students pay. So let me not make people, alarmed in the sense that our students are not paying. Our students are paying. There are some that do have a hardship, et cetera, down the line, and they're putting in reasons for why they can't, et cetera, all of those different pieces. So there is a broad base of reasons why students may not pay right by that due date. So when that is happening, we do start to drop the individuals. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that they are real students And if they have real issues that we need to help mitigate to ensure that they continue with their education, or if they're fraudulent, then yes, of course, we close that door and slam it shut as hard as we possibly can. So it's been that balance, over since COVID times. And so I do think that we have to get stronger in that arena, but that comes with pros and cons, right? And what I mean by stronger...
Because it would cut off the students that might be struggling.
Exactly.
Now, how do they register? Do they come with a fake ID, fake identification, fake name, fake information, and they just get into the system and register?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what they do. But they have made it so real that our technology has not been able to pick it up. So we had to be very smart about it. We had to develop certain types of methods to be able to really investigate it and begin to see, is it real or not? I was going to say that, but also what's made this situation of fraudulent enrollments so different than anything that I've seen before in my 36 years in higher ed is that it's happened on a massive scale. Sometimes it happens on one campus, right? Remember, there's 116 colleges in the state of California. So if it happened on one campus too, it's not a big deal, but it's happened in almost 80% now of the campuses. That means, 90%, 90 colleges at least have these issues and these situations. However, what usually happens is that it's usually one or two, three campuses who take the lead in identifying that technology that will help them. So no doubt Dr. Kim, she took action early. Some will say she took a chance. I don't think so because the numbers were so high. As she mentioned, the number of enrollments were 20% plus. So she had to take drastic action and to a certain degree take a chance and take a risk. But that risk has paid off because now it started with 3 or 4 colleges. Now you have 83 colleges who are using this technology. But it just goes to tell you the how big this problem is. And that's what's made it so different. And it's happened so quickly. We're talking about over a span of 12 to 18 months, or maybe even less. So that, we're a big state and we're a big higher education system. We don't react quickly. And in many ways, we're easy prey for these kind of situations. But we are reacting, and now you have, 80 plus colleges of 116 who are beginning to utilize this technology. But just one last thing. We know that this technology, we'll need to keep updating it and making it better and making it stronger. You can't rest on your laurels because people out there, the fraudulent, actors are really good at this stuff and they're really good at technology. So it's going to be part of our everyday lives now. We're going to have to improve this technology all the time.
What was it like to take action for you?
Relief. At that point, the faculty were they were so distraught, right? Because what was happening was that their class sizes were just eroding in front of their eyes. They thought that they were going to have classes of 20 plus, 30 plus, 50 plus students, and it would dwindle down to, the teens, in some cases single digits. So it was really, really devastating for them. And it was devastating for the students who couldn't get into those classes, right?
So meanwhile, you have
this,
some students that couldn't get in, but then the fake ones that will be in the class that would have to get kicked off.
Yeah. And so then the faculty members are looking at their classes and their whole, they teach because they love teaching, right? They love their discipline and they're doing that work and that's their craft. And they're not really able to do that for the audience that they were going to be able to do previously. And so there's that piece of it. There's an emotionality to it. But the other part of it was that, for everybody, it was relief to be able to put something in place, something that was going to help us catch these individuals, the bad actors that were causing this level of chaos within our entire system. And again, what it really came down to for us was that real students were being hurt by this. Real students were not able to get their courses. They were not able to get the classes that they needed to graduate. They weren't getting the classes that they needed for their degrees and to continue to matriculate. And that was devastating for us, for the counselors especially, as they watched the the crestfallen faces of our students. Like literally, we heard story after story on that. And the students were upset, and they were concerned because also in the enrollment arenas, we have a cost factor, right? So if your class only has 6 students and we're paying for a full faculty member to actually teach that class, it's not efficient, which means that it's costing us more to educate those 6 students for that class because it's not at the level of the numbers that it's supposed to be at, because we have to balance the budget in some way. And so students were coming up in the town halls and saying, are you going to let this class go? It's only got 7 students in it. But if I don't have this class, I don't have a way to graduate next year. And so we had to make some decisions. And so we made the decision in the favor of the students. So we went and let low enrolled classes move forward more than we would ever normally do. And so that was a double whammy in relation to our budget, right? So, to say that there was a sense of relief when we put the solution in, it's really an understatement in that regard. And when we really started to see it work, there was a level of confidence that came back for our faculty members. They knew they were no longer alone in this. They weren't having to figure it out for themselves. They weren't doing it as individuals because that's what was happening at that moment. And so for intercession, we applied the AI solution, and as a result of applying it, one of our faculty members in art, it starts with A, so they get hit faster. He was walking across campus and he walked up to one of our student services folks and said, "Oh my gosh, I have a clean roster. They're all real." And he was ecstatic. So, it's sad and it's elation all at the same time, right? Like to think that that's what we're dealing with right now. It's a little bit of like, okay, here's the reality piece, but it's a 1-2 punch all the way through and through. And so we've been able to carry that forward. We did it with spring. We got hit again in summer. We scrubbed again in summer. We got hit again for fall, we scrubbed again for fall, and we're just constantly doing it. So we have a practice of when we're dropping, we call, text, and email every single student. The phone call is really critical. They have an option to answer that phone, right? But what's happening is that it's going to, carnicerias, it's going to taquerias, it's going to Home Depot, businesses that are out of business. Like, I think some of these bad actors have they think it's funny because these phone numbers are, just random weird places, right?
And they're local or they're everywhere?
They're all over the place. And then the other part of it is that, even with all of this, I think to date, we've actually only got 20 to 25 cases of actual identity theft. And so we have identified 20 to 25 individuals whose identities were stolen. And when we called them up and they're like, yeah, that's me, yeah, that's me, yeah, that's me, and that's my information, et cetera, who the heck are you? And why do you have all of that? And then we have to provide the information and then send the information to the U.S. Department of Education and have them then follow up in relation to the identity theft and put in all of the measures. But we're basically the bearers of bad news in some of those phone calls because sometimes it does go to a live and real person who has no idea that their identity had been stolen.
Is it clear who's behind this and who is benefiting?
No, that's the problem. It's not clear. And if it was clear, then obviously then you would have the Department of Justice, you would have the Attorney General's office suing somebody or pursuing some type of action. But we're not seeing that. And I think we're not seeing that because no one really knows who is doing this. And maybe that's not the way to approach it at this point. I think the way to approach it at this point is to deal with it locally, the way that Dr. Kim has done it. Because that also has forced the other colleges throughout the whole state to also deal with it locally and not depend on someone to come and bail them out, but figure it out, work on it, and try to resolve it locally. So I think it's many ways it's been an empowering exercise for everybody that, look, let's not depend on anybody. We got to take care of ourselves. And I think you're beginning to see that action duplicated now at 83 colleges when you started out with 3 or 4. So we like where it's going, but as I said earlier, you can't rest on your laurels. These people are good. at what
They're
they do.
going to change and
They're going to change it.
what
They're
they're
going to
doing.
figure out what we're doing, and we're going to have to figure out a better way to take care of it. It's just part, it's going to be part of our everyday lives. And the reason is because we have accepted online education as a wave of the future. You know, we've accepted that. So we have no choice but to also deal with everything that comes with that.
What if they use AI and they're using that probably, right, to do homework and other things?
Oh yeah, and we've caught some. So it's the use of AI in the classroom. I know it can be debated around, honesty, academic honesty, and all of those kinds of things. But it can also be used as a tool, right? The problem with the bad actors is that they're using the AI for really bad intentions. They're having it do its homework. They're giving the prompt into whatever agent that they're using. They're turning out a homework piece, and then they're submitting it as if it's their own. And that's the worst case that we can possibly have. Now, the other thing that we found funny, though, is that we've had cases where we identified as a fraudulent enrollment because they submitted the same homework assignment to two different faculty members, but they thought it was two different faculty members, and it turned out it was the same faculty member, and said, no, you can't submit the same homework to both classes and think that you're going to get credit for it. And so then we figured out that wasn't a bot, right? It was a fraudulent actor in the mix. And so we have, all of those kinds of situations, and I'm sure so many more that are going to start to occur. Mm-hmm. And as the chancellor mentioned, we've actually already modified the programming around the AI agent that's helping us. The company, Lightleap AI, and the end-to-end solution, they have actually now taken in all of the information throughout the state for everybody who's participating in identifying fraudulent enrollments, because prior to the AI solution coming in, we were doing some things already. So we had some systems in place using ID.me and all these other criterion that we were using. And so we were trying to do it locally and just with human intervention. And with the AI piece of it, they put all of this information in. But the beauty of it is that with the end-to-end Lightleap solution, we're able to actually consume all of the data. So now with 83 campuses or the 116 that are reporting through various different channels, we're basically consolidating all of that information, and what we thought was happening was definitely there. They're the same bad actors, same fake IDs are being used at multiple institutions around the state. And so we got another list back of saying these are potentially fraudulent enrollments, or they were identified as fraudulent enrollments in other parts.
Of the bad actors.
Correct. So it's being generated on a constant basis now. So we're able to do some of this stuff, and that's the normal logical step, right? But we are putting in other things that I won't talk about on camera because we're trying to stay ahead of the game, because the technology is constantly changing. And as the chancellor mentioned, we have to stay ahead of it as the best we possibly can. But again, higher ed doesn't move very quickly, as he mentioned already, but we are doing our very best, because at the end of the day, this is about public dollars. Public dollars that are supporting public institutions to ensure that our students and our community are educated for the future of California. We're here because we want to be the economic engines of our regions. We're here because we believe in the mission and the equality that comes with having knowledge and skills and being able to have a wage that gives you a standard of living where you can live in California. And that's what these fraudulent actors are taking away from our students. And so that's why this mission is so very critical in terms of addressing it and maintaining the technology and moving all of this forward. Because it's hindering our primary mission. It's literally keeping real students out of those classes.
It seems like a big headache. And how much does this cost you guys? What's the cost of all these tools and
How much
time
did you
and
budget
energy
to?
and systems?
Actually, my handshake deal with the CEO was not that expensive because that was all the money that I had at the moment. It did not approach $100,000, I'll tell you that. And so I was able to do that handshake deal. And now that the system has adopted his solution, that company's solution at the system level, it's actually gotten even a little bit more affordable for everybody. So I want to say I think it's typically less than about $75,000 for each
For the
institution to be
technology, right.
able to participate.
Well, the costs in the future will eventually come from us having the staff that's needed, the computer science techies, and we're going to need to have more. We're going to need to ensure that they are the best at what they do. But here's the challenge. If you're good at computer science, you're not going to work at community college because we don't pay well. You're going to work somewhere else, at another technological Tesla, whoever that may be, and make a lot more. So we're going to have to adjust in order to be able to bring those type of individuals on board. Yeah, so we'll have, so the impact will be, not so much in the technology, but in the staff. And we're going to need the staff because when you're a college president, Dr. Kim has a lot of other things to do. She doesn't have time to look at every detail as it relates to fraudulent enrollments. And that's where the staffing comes in.
Before we move on to the rest of this interview, let's take a look at some key headlines in our newspaper, Epoch Times, this week. What's happening right now in California, the state is changing its policies toward oil and gas. There was a meeting a week ago in the legislature, and the governor has asked the legislature and California Energy Commission to come up with rules and change their policies toward oil and gas so more refineries can stay in California. There's a new poll in California with gubernatorial race. Everybody was wondering, who's going to take Kamala Harris's votes? Now, this poll is showing that Katie Porter has gotten about 21% support, and Chad Bianco, who's a Republican, is the second in place with 15% of the voters. We're going to be watching the gubernatorial race here in Epoch Times and California Insider. LA just busted a multi-million-dollar ring of cargo theft, and cargo theft nationally is up 27% in 2024 compared to 2023. Some people have complained to us about the issues in LA with burglaries. LAPD just busted a group of burglary suspects that had hit 92 homes, and it looks like LAPD is now going after these rings. This is just a handful of interesting stories from our California section. We have many other stories that cover national issues, international issues, China issues, and we have other sections like mind and body health. They have amazing stories. Make sure to check out our newspaper. You can click on the link below. You will get a deal, $1 a week for the first 4 weeks, and tell us what you think of the Epoch Times newspaper. You mentioned all this started because you went online.
Yes.
And is it worth it? Or do you think things will go back to more in person?
Yeah, I think it's worth it. It's worth it because we're providing access. It's about providing access to individuals who can't come to the campus, who want to be enrolled in the program that maybe only Dr. Kim has on her campus, but they happen to live in Fresno. So it gives access. And so to me, that part is good, and we have the ability and technology to do it, we should. However, obviously, I think this has happened so fast that we had fraudulent actors who I'm sure saw that, and they took advantage of our vulnerability. But now I think every campus has, in essence, awakened, and they've gotten smarter about this. But again, as I keep saying, the challenge is staying ahead of it. And sometimes, because we're such a big system, we're not very good at it. We just react. And this situation is we're gonna have to be in the offensive as opposed to just being on the defensive all the time. It's hard enough for one campus. Think about it for 116 colleges in the largest community college system, not only in the country, but the world. It is a massive undertaking. But that's okay. We're only worried about our campuses for today, right?
I think that with online education, as the chancellor said, it's about access, and it does provide that. I think that, but if you remember back in the early 2000s, so I was actually teaching online courses back in the 2000s. I was one of the early adopters, one of the very first to actually teach online. And I was doing it as adjunct faculty at Cal State Fullerton. The thing was that the technology that I used back then, much to my chagrin, had not changed any when we were in 2020 and I was transitioning another district from face-to-face into the online environments. We hadn't made any changes in 20 years in relation to the technology and in the ways that we were doing online education. It hadn't been given thought or development, not to the levels to which we're currently using it right now. So we've only got a 5-year history right now with online education in reality. And I would say maybe even less than that because we didn't really get it under our belt the first time out the gates. It was really hard. And faculty actually resisted. So now though, faculty like the online environment because there are benefits to it as well. And so there is this balance that we're trying to create. But what we're still seeing is that, the way that we've taught the in-person methodology, we know it works. We've tried it for literally hundreds of years in multiple areas around the world, right? Face-to-face works. The online arena and online education, it's truly only been tested for the past 5 years. And again, not necessarily very well. There are some institutions that have really gone full force and they're doing excellent at it because that's what their whole unique proposition was. And that value proposition paid out for them, but they changed their entire organization around in order to make that happen. We haven't, as higher education, actually done that as a whole. We're still struggling through all of these different pieces. So if you look at some of the success rates, et cetera, down the line, it all depends on the faculty member, their level of technology adoption, their knowledge level, how much are they keeping up. All of those become factors in terms of whether or not these courses are truly the best for that student at that moment in time. So we have all of those kinds of evaluations that we still need to do, but at the same time, we're not going to walk away from online education because of the access aspect of it. There's too much value in that.
So just one more issue in that, we used to be primarily focused on high school students. That was our main pipeline of students, but that's gone smaller. So in many ways, how are we closing that gap of the students who are not coming as many, meaning the high school students? That gap's being closed by adult students. So who's an adult student? Well, it could be a person who's 30, 35, 40 years old. They're probably married. They have a mortgage. They have a full-time job. They have kids. They're paying bills. They can't go to school full-time because they're working. But they can go to school at home. They can take the class in their laptop. They could, that's what's also changing today is the number of adults has just dramatically increased in our campuses. In fact, in both of our campuses, both Santiago Canyon College and Santa Ana College, the number of adult students has catapulted non-credit education to be higher than credit, right? For the most part, I remember there were for like 90% of our enrollments were students who were primarily high school students who were in classes so they can transfer, and that who was in the classes. That's begun to change. And so how do we keep that up? Well, we're going to need to make it accessible to an adult who's working, who's a parent, who's paying bills. They can't go to school full time. So that's why I think it's just here to stay. If we look at this from the perspective of Sacramento, they'll need to maybe budget more and increase the amount of resources that we're getting so that we have the resources to be able to support our technology needs, our staffing needs so that we can stay ahead of this. Because if it doesn't happen, then we're going to be losing money and we're going to have to go back to Sacramento anyway. I think the future, our bread and butter is going to be how do we deal with the fraudulent actors? And they're going to have to rethink how they want to fund us and how they want to give us resources. And that's part of my job, as part of Dr. Kim's job, to go to Sacramento, help legislators understand what we're doing, help the governor's office understand what we're doing so they can really support the needs that we have. If you look at the budgets that they're giving us, it's the same way they're giving us money 20 years ago. Look what's changed in 20 years, almost everything. So again, even the state's very slow to react. So I keep saying that we're easy prey. We're very easy prey because we just react from the statewide to the local level. We're just very slow to react.
Thank you for watching California Insider on YouTube. If you like our content, make sure to press the like button and comment so that the algorithm can reach more people. If you're not a subscriber yet, make sure to subscribe to our channel so that we can update you with the trends and issues that are going on in California. Now let's go back to the interview. If you wouldn't have caught these fake students and you would have just sat there and not done anything about it, you probably would have gotten a lot more money from the state, right?
Yeah,
Well, if we hadn't acted and dropped them, yeah, we would have gotten a lot more money. Absolutely.
Like 25%, 23% more, right?
Yeah, if
Because
our
you dropped.
faculty hadn't dropped the students in that first fall term, absolutely we would have gotten more money.
Yeah,
but that's not something that, as public leaders, we can't step into that space. We are here to have an ethical and moral compass when it comes to dealing with these kinds of issues, because we are public servants. We're paid by the public taxpayer. And so I have a moral and ethical obligation to do what is right and have integrity in every step that I'm taking, whether the public sees it or not. And that's how we need to operate. And I do believe that is the heart of the community college system, right? Because we do this, because we want to educate the students, our community, our working adults who are our primary population right now. And we need to have the resources and the supports that are necessary to be able to do that. So one of the things, since the chancellor mentioned it in the technology budget that was cut, was a common ERP system. That's an enterprise resource platform. So the community colleges, and this is a third rail amongst CEOs, so I will caveat this, but for me and from my personal perspective and the way that I look at the way California operates, there is power in economies of scale, right? So if we're all on the same common ERP system, it makes it a whole lot easier for us to be able to catch fraudulent enrollments, deal with reporting, provide real-time data, be more responsive to public inquiries around our access, our success, our completion, whatever the question is from our state legislators. But if we don't have that, we do what we're currently doing. And again, we're reacting, we're not responding. And there's a difference, right? When we react, we got to do this right now. If we're responding, we're supposed to do that intelligently, comprehensively, cohesively. And that's the part that we need to get to at this point.
Yeah. So just a couple of things. Dr. Kim mentioned the responsibility we have to taxpayer dollars. So just to take it a step further, we have a fiduciary responsibility, me and Dr. Kim, to protect that money and to make sure that money's been spent correctly. And if we know there's fraudulent actors out there and they're taking advantage, then we're being negligent in terms of the people's money. So that's why having that fiduciary responsibility is critical to what we do. Just one last thing, coming back to what is the state's responsibility. Well, they don't know what the responsibility is yet. So it's up to us as administrators to go to Sacramento, to go to our local legislators and help them understand why it's critical today. Because they have so many needs. This year, of course, the big issue that Sacramento was dealing with, how do they support all the victims of the fires in Pacific Palisades and Altadena? And should they receive more should they receive more of the resources than us? Absolutely. They don't have homes. They don't have the basic needs, and we get that. So, but still, our responsibility is to go to Sacramento and say, we understand that, but this is also a major need, and somehow you need to find a way where you put resources into this and not cut it and think that all of a sudden magically all these issues will be resolved. Luckily, 2 or 3 campuses took the lead. They took the lead, and now you have everyone else following. But if those campuses are not taking the lead like Dr. Kim and her campus, then we'd have a huge problem today, huge.
Chancellor Marvin Martinez and Dr. Jeannie Kim, President, it's great to have you on California Insider.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Let us know what you think about of the phenomena of fake students in community colleges in California. You can always email me at siamak@californiainsider.com or comment. We read all of your emails and comments. I'm Siamak Koremi. This is California Insider. We'll see you next time.